Welcome to Rico 12. I'm Justin, your host and a beautifully imperfect, stumbling, bumbling child of an absolutely powerful and perfectly loving God and an addict living in the miracle of recovery. Rico 12 is all about exploring the common threads of addiction and sharing tools and hope from those on a similar path. We gather from diverse backgrounds, faiths, and places. In fellowships, we are completely open to all fellowships to learn and support one another. Our speakers, as I mentioned, are members of various fellowships, addictions and afflictions, thus showing the common threads of recovery, no matter our addiction or affliction. It's good to be back on this week. A huge thank you goes out to Liza L. and Nikki M. for filling in for me last week while I spent valuable and meaningful time with my grandson and the rest of my family. Today's speaker for the 289th meeting, no, 298th meeting. I was thinking that's not right. 98th meeting. We're getting close to 300 meetings. Is David G., a Rico 12 regular. Not only has he spoken twice in these meetings, but he is also a weekly panelist on the Rico 12 Big Book Roundtable that releases every Thursday. And I'm grateful that he was able and willing to fill in kind of last minute as our scheduled speaker had to reschedule for early next year. David's topic today is the power of resolve, revealing self. And I look forward to hearing that message here in a few minutes. First, for a little bit of business. Rico 12 has several recovery resources in our family of podcasts. I mentioned the Big Book Roundtable here just a few minutes ago. But we also have a couple of others. If you want to learn more, listen more, connect more, just hang out and learn and grow with us, you can find those podcasts at rico12.com. That's RECO12.com. You can also join our social communities, check out the chat and the show notes for links to those things. Rico 12 is self-supporting, and your contributions help us continue our mission. Thanks to all of our spearheads, past, present, and future, and a special thanks this week to Abigail for your contributions this week. Your donations really help in this project. If you out there also feel the desire to become a spearhead and support this cause, visit rico12.com/support. Click on the links that I'll have in the chat and the show notes here as we go along for one-time or monthly donation options. Your support, not only financially, but with your word of mouth, makes a difference in keeping us being able to share these messages of recovery. We look forward each meeting to receiving from the light reflected from our speakers. That light inspires hope, meaning, worth, and growth in us, the listening audience. Now I'm going to introduce our guest speaker for today, David G., and just give a little background on him. David is a sober member of AA since August 8th of 1994, having had a life-changing spiritual experience in 1995 as a result of the 12 steps, as outlined in our big book. He soon learned he had no idea how to grow and develop. He had how to grow and develop with it. He found that yesterday's miracle wasn't sufficient for today. Other things began to compete for that experience, and they eventually won out. In 2019, he reached an emotional bottom in sobriety. He suffered from a spiritual illness brought on by the human condition, self. He was freed in 2019 and has continued to grow and walk emotionally free ever since. David is also, as I mentioned, a co-host on the Rico 12 Big Book Roundtable that releases every Thursday morning on your favorite podcast platform. Take it away, David. The floor is yours.
All right. Thank you so much, Justin, for your service and all that you continue to do for the recovery community. And it's just a great honor to be here with you always. And just such a pleasure to see everybody. I'm David G. from Oklahoma. I'm a recovered alcoholic and addict of many sorts. As Justin said, I have been sober by the grace of God in the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous since August 8th, 1994. And I am truly, truly grateful to be here today. I've been a little bit under the weather, so if you can deal with my kind of head cold, my voice, I already got quite the Southern drawl to begin with, but then you add that on top of it, and it brings in all kinds of craziness. So if you can get past that, I think that we will have a good time here together. I'm always honored to be here with Rico 12. I tell you what a life-changing podcast this is. I have met so many people from around the world that have reached out to me to sponsor them or get them in touch with somebody that can sponsor them through the Big Book the way that we do it. And I'm just so grateful for that. So Justin, again, thank you so much. And just very grateful. When Justin talked to me, we talked about self, and you hear this a lot, especially in my talk. And a lot of the guys that I sponsor, they will talk about self, and they will talk about self's will, and they will talk about the different things. And And this is because of what I've learned, what I've experienced. As Justin said, I hit an emotional bottom in Alcoholics Anonymous in 2019. I was 25 years sober at that time. And I really had suffered from lust and secrets and acting out for a good many years and had gotten away with that. I was pretty much in the grip of that illness and didn't really realize how devastating it was until it really came to the surface. I had tried to overcome that many times, but I just couldn't. And I think the reason why is because, I really didn't understand what the true problem was. I thought lust was the problem. I thought sex was the problem. I thought all these other things was the problem. But if that's the problem, it should quit when we quit. But if that continues to show up, then there's something else deeper than that that's the problem. And our book talks about this as self. And I say this a lot. The flea is all kinds of different addictions. You may have food, you may have gambling, you may have shopping, you may have lust, alcohol, drugs. It could be any number of things. The flea is always different, but the dog never is. The dog is self. And that dog is always there. It's always there. And the reason that I talked about revealing self, one is on page 29 of our big book. And if you have a big book, if you'd like to just journey over to that page with me for just a minute, I just want to look at the very last paragraph. In fact, the last sentence or the first sentence in the last paragraph. And it says this, it says, "We hope that no one will consider these self-revealing accounts in bad taste." It goes on to say that our hope is that many alcoholic men and women desperately in need will see these pages, keywords, and believe it's only by fully disclosing, and I take that word "our" out of that. I don't identify with self as myself, ourself, yourself, their self. It's self, period. So when you see that word in that first sentence that says self-revealing, if you will turn that word around, really what it is, it's revealing self. And that's what we're going to do through the process of the book and the way that I outline it and the guys that I take through it. Now, on page 27 of the book as well, if you will go to there, this is the story of a man named Roland Hazard who had a conversation with a well-known psychiatrist of that day, Dr. Carl Jung. Now, Roland had spent a year with Dr. Jung, and he had went away after that year. He knew what was wrong with him, and he said, I'll never relapse again. Anybody else ever feel that way after going through the 12 steps? And I ain't talking about drinking. Our drink changes as we get sober. It changes. Mine changed to lust. Some people's changed to food or gambling or whatever it may be. But Roland ended up drunk on his way back to America. So he come back to the doctor, and on page 27, they give a brief description of that conversation that Roland had with Dr. Carl Jung. And there's some very vital information in here because I want to know where this self comes from. If it's what's defeating me, and my book tells me over and over that's what it is, then I need to take a closer look at where it comes from. So if we drop to, I think it's probably, I don't know, second or third paragraph there, whatever. But it starts almost in the middle of the page, and it says this. "Yes," replied the doctor, "there are exceptions to cases such as yours, which has been occurring since early times. Here and there, once in a while, alcoholics have had what are called vital spiritual experiences. To me, these occurrences are phenomenal. They appear to be in the nature of a huge emotional displacement and rearrangement." Now, here's the words I want to zone in on. Ideas, emotions, and attitudes which were once the guiding force of the lives of these men are suddenly cast to one side. Now, if you'll take those two words, guiding forces, and you will turn those around, really what that's telling me that there is a force that guides me. And the way it guides me is through my ideas, my emotions, and my attitudes. Well, that's good information, but where in the hell did that come from? How did that get set up in me to begin with? And anytime that I look at ideas, emotions, concepts, beliefs, attitudes, these is what makes up this activity. It's not an entity. I always thought for a long time self or the devil or whatever the hell you want to call it was a separate entity, but what I've come to realize is it's a mental activity. And it tells me right there that that's the truth. And so Where did it come from? And in my story, if you've heard my story at all, which I'm not here to talk about today, there was a lot of abuse and a lot of trauma in my early childhood. And the day came whenever I had to put a stop to that. Now, I used to tell the theatrics of the story, how bad he bled, how much time I spent in jail and all this stuff over that. I don't do that from the podium anymore. All I can tell you is there was a lot of abuse, and I put a stop to it once and for all and for good. And I had to pay for that in a lot of different ways. But what happened to me was it set up the idea, keyword, in my mind that no one was ever going to treat me that way again. If they did, I would do exactly what I did to him. And I lived by that for many years to come. So these ideas begin to form inside of me and grow with me without my knowledge of it. And the next thing you know, hell, I'm living against the values and the man that God created me to be. And all of a sudden I'm living this other way. And I don't even know that's happening to me. So that's how self begins in us. And until we have that awakening, I don't care what your addiction is, it will switch from one to another or one to another. And the next thing you know, you're in bondage. Now, through this work, there's an exercise on page 47 of the book that really has us to look at spiritual terms. And we look at this pretty closely because terms have a lot to do with my thoughts and my beliefs. Now, if we talk about the second step, it says that we came to believe that a power greater than self could restore us to sanity. Think about the first two words in that title of that step. We came. That's past tense. We've already came to some sort of a belief a long time ago. But my question is to the guys that I work with and guys that approach me, how's that working out in your life? I mean, if you're sober and have been through these steps, but you're still struggling with sex or food or whatever it may be, is that belief really working for you? Or could it be that we might need a new experience from those ideas, emotions, concepts, and attitudes? Because look at the rest of that sentence on page 27. These were once, key word, promise, the guiding force of the lives of these men. But they are suddenly cast to one side, these ideas, emotions, concepts, beliefs, and attitudes. And now a completely new set begins to dominate them. So if I'm having trouble in my recovery and my sobriety, I can't get sober in one area or the other. Could it be that I don't need to recover from the lust or from whatever it is? I need to recover from the ideas, the emotions, the concepts, and the beliefs that are setting me up to have resentments and fears and the things that are beating me on a regular basis. And I don't even really know this is happening to me. What does my conscious contact with God look like? What is my idea of God? For me, through this process, and I've been through it many times in 30 years, but I became a Christian this last time. Now, I'm not the kind that says, okay, you have to do this or else, you know, but I'm talking about my experience, the daily walk that I've found. I have something here that I'd like to read. It's on eternal bondage. And this is what most of us suffer from while we're sober. And it reads like this, and it goes along with our second step. We came to believe that a power, it doesn't say we came to believe in a power. It says we came to believe that a power. There's a hell of a big difference in the way that's wording. Don't miss that wording because it can make the difference in your experience with that step. We don't really care if you believe. The book says lack of power. That's our dilemma, not lack of belief, not lack of choice, not lack of structure, not lack of courage, faith, none of that. No, lack of power. So here's what I have. When we are under the influence of our addictions, their hold on us may seem to have supernatural force. We may give up on life and throw ourselves into self-destructive behaviors with reckless abandon. Anybody ever done that, even sober? Others may also give up on us. You ever had people walk away from you? After 25 years, I had an entire group that I had founded vote me out and walk away and rightfully so. I was hell-bent on destructing everybody and everything in that group. These may distance themselves from us, or they may distance themselves from us as though we're already dead. Whether our insanity is self-induced or has more sinister origin, there is power available to restore us to sanity and wholeness. Now, the creator, which I call today the Christ, you may call it spirit source. I don't care what you call it. This is what I call it. And when you hear me talk about the master teacher, it's talking about Christ. He helped a man who was acting insanely that lived in a burial cave. That sounds a lot like us. You can take these stories and you can relate those to us. One of the stories is the master teacher and 12 of his sponsees was out walking around one day, and they seen a man that was up on a hill. He was chained and he was naked and he was beaten. And anybody relate to that? If you think about our own drunkenness, our own addiction, can you relate to that? I can. Well, one of the sponsees had 3 years and he knew everything about everything. All you had to do was ask him. And he said, we don't need to go up there. That man is insane. He is crazier than hell. Sounds like an alcoholic to me, or a drug addict. But the master teacher said, no, we're going up there anyway. And so he went up and he asked him 2 questions. The master teacher said, what is your name? And the other thing that he asked him is, do you want to get well? And that's the same thing that the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous and All Addictions Anonymous did to me when I came here. You people asked me 2 questions. 1, what is your name? 2, do you want to get well? As a result of following your directions, I had a spiritual experience. And again, other things competed for my recovery and won out. But I had to realize that that was self. Now, people say we don't get well here. You'll hear it in meetings all the time. I guess you went off and got well. I can damn sure tell you that we get well here, because in how it works, it talks about, working with others, it talks about it over and over and over. And so this book is just beautiful whenever it comes to that. It says, ask him, if he's willing to go to any lengths to get well, and so, but in order for me to do that, there's a lot of things that I'm going to have to give up. I'm going to have a new experience. And this is what has happened to me. So the rest of that story kind of reads like, when the man was in chains and shackles, he often snapped those chains. He was strong. But what he didn't realize is it wasn't the outer addiction and things that was killing him. It was the internal stuff that was going on inside of him that was killing him. And that's what our book describes as the self. Now, great news to know. How the hell do I recover from it? That becomes the main question. 1, I have to surrender, complete surrender. I had a guy that I took through this process not long ago. He was doing absolutely wonderful, but he would not do steps 10 and 11 on a regular basis. I don't mess around with that. I let people go quick. You can ask any number of guys that are on here. You lax on that, we're done. And so anyway, he ended up going back again. And as a result of that, he's in a very bad way now, a very, very bad way. When I work the first 3 steps as outlined in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and the one thing that I'm going to see over and over and over are thoughts. He fell victim to a belief. Page 31, he fell victim to a belief that practically every alcoholic has, that his long period of sobriety and self-discipline qualified him to drink as other men. Out came his carpet slippers. He took a drink. Long story short, he died in 4 years. Well, most people read that and say, I don't want to drink again. I'll die in 4 years. I need to continue to recover from the lust or the drink. No, I need to recover from falling victim to the belief that somehow, someday, I will control and enjoy whatever it may be, because that is what's going to kill me, the belief. Every action is born in thought. And if I'm not learned to watch those thoughts in step 10, the way that it's outlined on page 84 of this book, then I can promise you the day's going to come that's going to show up. I'm not going to be aware of that thought. I'm going to take action based on it. And the next thing you know, I'm in all kinds of hell one more time. So once I work steps 4 through 9 and I have an awakening from this, I want to go to page 84 for just a second, because this is a very important piece of our program that should be practiced on a daily basis from the start. There's only 5 things here that it's asking me to do on a daily basis. And we'll start in the middle of the page where it says, this thought brings us to step 10, where it suggests that we continue to take personal inventory and continue to set right any new mistakes as we go along. Now, if we're not doing that daily in our recovery, the chances are that those mistakes are going to come back to see us again, and we're not even going to be aware they're there until we've screwed up. Our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. It's not an overnight matter. It should continue for our lifetime. That tells you how long we should be working step 10. 5 things it's going to ask us to do. Look at the first one, watch. The master teacher said this, watch and pray, watch and pray, watch and pray. He said that over and over and over and over. Don't fall asleep. You better stay awake, and you better watch, and you better pray, because if you don't, it's like a roaring lion, and it's going to devour you. I promise you. He come back out of after he was praying. He come back. He found his sponsees asleep. He said, hell, couldn't you even stay awake for an hour? How about you? Ever been working somebody through the steps, send them to a meeting, and within an hour, they fall back to sleep, and the next thing you know, they're acting out again. It's the same thing. Here's why. For me, I was not watching. This says continue to watch. For selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. Now, the opposite of those are what we practice in our 11th step daily. Absolute honesty, absolute unselfishness, absolute purity, absolute love. And if I'm not watching for these things and I'm replacing it with that, then I'm sure to take another fall. That's number 1. Look at number 2. It says, when these crop up, not if, when. We ask God at once to remove them. And if you have a pen, circle at once, because it's telling me like right now, not after a while, not after I call my sponsor, not after I go to a meeting, at once. That's number 2. Number 3, we discuss them with someone, and look at this word, immediately. Number 4, make amends. Look at this word, quickly. Notice how he said at once, immediately, quickly. I mean, he's saying you better get on top of these thoughts, because they're going to get on top of you, and you're going to take action that you wish you hadn't. And you're not even going to realize you've done that because you went back to sleep. Number 5, and the most important for me, to resolutely turn my thoughts to someone I can help. I don't even have to help anyone, but I must turn my thoughts to helping other people, because that is the entire program and how we work it. So 5 things it's asking me to do here. Once I've discovered self, once I've come through the inventory process, steps 4 through 9, step 10 is going to ask me to practice steps 4 through 9 on a daily basis, and it's going to do it in 5 ways. 1, watch. 2, pray. Remember what the master teacher said, watch and pray, watch and pray, watch and pray. 3, discuss. 4, make amends quickly. 5, turn your thoughts. And if you can do that on a daily basis, once you get in the habit of doing that, I promise you, your likelihood of falling back to sleep and relapsing from whatever it may be is highly unlikely if you're serious about that. I don't think I probably have enough time to go into step 11, but that is probably that is the least practiced and the most important step of all of the 12. To improve that conscious contact with God as we understood him. Notice the word understood, not understand, understood. What I understood at 1 year was different at 5. What I understood at 5 was different at 10. 10 to 15 was different. 15 to 20, 25, and now 30 years later, what I've understood continues to grow as I grow. It's not God as I understand God. It's God as I understood him. And that's what it's saying. Justin, how much time do I got, bro?
You got about 5 minutes.
Okay. Real quickly, page 86 talks about on awakening. We think of the hours ahead. We consider our plans for the day. Before we begin, we ask God. Before I even begin to look at anything in my day, the first thing I need to do is ask God to direct my thinking, because that's where self will get me. If I fall asleep, it'll be there waiting on me. Trust me, it will. And so the way I practice step 11 today is I do it the way that the first 100 did it of Alcoholics Anonymous and the Pioneer in Time, with the 4 absolutes and 2-way prayer. Today, The first thing in the morning when I get up, on my knees, I say the third step prayer. I get in my bunk. If I'm in my semi, I'm a semi driver, or if I'm here in my home, I relax in my chair. I ask God to direct my thinking, that it especially be divorced from self pity, self seeking, and dishonest motives. Now, those are time based emotions. Self pity, it always deals with the past. Self seeking is always dealing with the future. And dishonesty is the present lie that is the self. And so I asked for those things to be divorced. Now, in order for me to be divorced from something, at one point I must have been married to it without even knowing it. So I've been married to self without even, that's a hard feeling. And so, but what I do is I begin to look at my day. I ask God for guidance, the knowledge of his will for me, and the power to carry that out. And everything that comes to mind, I write it down. I don't care what it is, good, bad, ugly. Once that's over, I come back with the four absolutes and look exactly at what I've written down. If it doesn't line up with one of them four absolutes, it goes away, because that wasn't God speaking, that was self. Now that's how I continue to watch for self. Now, when those things crop up in my quiet time, one of the things that I do today is I use step 10. I spot it immediately. I'm already with God, so I discuss it with him. I turn to him, and I turn my thoughts right back to helping someone else. Bill said it like this in the 12 and 12. He said, taken separately, talking about 10 and 11, he said, these two steps can bring much relief. But when they're interwoven, like we're talking about right here, this becomes an unshakable foundation for life. I usually end with what it says on page 87. We conclude the period of meditation with a prayer we be shown all through the day. I pray that prayer. I do exactly what it says in that paragraph, and then I close out with the Lord's Prayer. That's every morning. It takes me about an hour to do all that. My quiet time went from just a couple of minutes to an hour. Now, not everybody says that they can do that. I don't have time to do that. I don't have time not to do that. I've had my ass kicked enough in 30 years of sobriety from lust. I don't want any more of it. I promise you. So, as a result of what's happened here, today, I'm very aware of self. I know there's one who has all power that can relieve that. My marriage has been restored. My family has been healed. 3 of my 4 kids have healed from drug addiction. I have a wonderful career today. I have a weekly podcast with my brother Justin here, and then my sister Nikki from over in Toronto. I do conferences and get to speak all over, and it's just an amazing life that I've been given. God is so good. And I'll just close with this. Our book says, though you be one man with the book in your hand, we believe that it contains all that you need to begin. But you may say to yourself, yeah, but I won't have the benefit of being with you who write the book. It says we can't be sure of that. God will determine that. You must always rely upon him. I can tell you since 2019, I've sponsored thousands of people through this process of the work. I walked into the SA fellowship. I was able to help that entire fellowship learn and understand the big book in a better way. Though you be one man with this book in your hand, it contains all you need to begin. But never forget this. You must always, always rely upon God, because if you don't, self is waiting. Trust me, he'll come get you. So reveal self, and, the power of proposal. We heal here. We absolutely do. Thank you guys for letting me share today.
Thank you so much, David. I really appreciate your share, the insights you had there, and the calm but powerful presence you bring into sharing your experience, strength, and hope is just something that I really not rely on, but I really enjoy. It's something that I really enjoy, and I love the time that you and I get to spend together doing this work. To those who are here live, if you have questions for David, please type them in the chat. I've put some instructions in there in the chat as to how to do that. We'll get to those questions as they come along. I've got a couple here, and I want to go off of what you kind of closed out here, David, first, and share a little of my own experience, and then have you comment on that just a little bit. You said, but some of you will say, but I have not had the benefit of contact with you who write this book, with you who have paved the path in the past. We're not so sure about that. Man, in the last, since 2020, actually late 2019 for me. I have been put in contact with so many of these people who have made a huge difference in my life. When I thought, here I am, this little, and I'm still just this little guy that lives in Spokane, Washington, who has no real power or authority in anything other than I strive to do what I think God wants me to do. And these connections that have happened in the last almost 5 years have just helped me so much. David, share a little bit about your experience with the connections that have happened as you strive to practice these principles in all your affairs.
Well, the experience have been good and bad, depending on where I'm at in my spiritual walk with God. And I have learned that the more that I trust and rely upon and practice these steps and continue to ask God each and every day to help me to grow in effectiveness and understanding the way that we read here today, beautiful experiences have come my way. One is, I spoke a couple of weekends ago at a in-person state conference here, right near Oklahoma in Texas, and there were a lot of people there that knew what I had done to the fellowship as a whole 5 to 6 years ago. And that talk was very God-centered, and it was well received by many people. And so I was very thankful, very grateful, very much at peace. They gave us a beautiful, beautiful room, with the lakeside shore on it and all. And I just thank God, praise God. And so I'm driving a couple of days ago in my semi, and I get a call from a man in the Oklahoma area. Now, I can tell you it's been a long time since I've been invited back into my home state to speak because of what I've done to particularly women in the fellowship. I hurt so many people. And he is the speaker seeker for a big, what's called citywide in our area. And I mean, it's just hundreds of people. I'm talking 500 to 1,000 people attend that thing all the time. And it's something that I never have been invited to. And in fact, he's been on my amends list for a long time because I indirectly hurt him in such a way. But he invited me to come and to speak at that event in February of this year. And it was just unbelievable. It's been so long since I've been invited back to Oklahoma. I've been invited a lot of other places, but I can tell you that I really, really see the healing power of God starting to take place in what's going on. That's just one of many experiences that I've had, but it's just a beautiful way to live today. My whole outlook has been displaced and rearranged now. I used to be very loud. I used to be very aggressive. I mean, I would get up on you quick. I don't even feel that way anymore, man. It's just like, I love you as a brother. If we can't connect in this deal, good. Go your way. I'll go mine. But I don't want to hurt you no more. I just don't. And so, yeah, it's been a lot of beautiful experiences, Justin. A lot.
Thank you, David. And while I didn't know you before 2019, I can only imagine what that looked like and see that. And I see the serenity that you generally emit. All right. We have a question from an anonymous member of our live audience here. This person says, I've learned so much from this podcast and many others with David and Dennis. Is the Big Book treated as a sacred text? What are your thoughts on that about the Big Book and sacred text, David?
Yes, for me, it is absolutely a sacred text. And the reason why is because, it's more than just mere reading material for me anymore. For so long, I read the Big Book. I wanted to take notes of everything cool that everybody was saying so I could put it into my intellect. And then when I went to speak, then I would have all this wonderful knowledge. Now, I've never shared that. Somebody else gave that stuff to me, or I wanted you to pretty much believe that all came from, oh, wow, that David Green's a powerful speaker, Really, when I do that, I deceive you, I deceive me, and I dishonor my God. This book is very sacred because the principles are ancient. This is not the original Big Book, y'all. I hate to tell you that. This is not the original Big Book. The Good Book is the original Big Book. And if you look early at the first 100 men and women, The original big book of Alcoholics Anonymous was the Bible. Now I have a book that I have here, and I'm just beginning to read this. And it's called The Big Book, The Good Book and the Big Book. And what this does, it'll give you a wonderful idea of everything that's pretty much written here, and other things as well, basically come from this original text, the Holy Bible, especially from like James, 1 Corinthians, all these other chapters. And so now when I read the big book, I see it with different eyes. I can see how God took that and wrote that for people who would not accept that book. And I was I was one of them for many, many years. It has taken me many, many years to concede to that. But I can tell you today, the two together has become an unshakable foundation. The big book is the most sacred text for me. There's a guy, his name's Tom the Weatherman. If you ever listen to Tom the Weatherman, he's a podcast host like Justin, my brother Justin here. And at the end of all of his podcasts, he asks this question: you're on a ship, it's sinking. Your family's gotten off and they've gotten to safety. You're out in the middle of the ocean. You've got a plastic bag. You've got one book. You've got your pick of any book. Which book are you going to take with you? Because you're going to be saved. I have to say the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, because for me, it's the most sacred text. Today they run together, but please don't make me choose one. If I do, it's going to have to be the big book, because it saved my life. It led me to a higher understanding of God in my understanding, or God as I understood him, and then, the beautiful words of the original text in the way I understand it today. So I hope that answers the question. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, David. All right, I have a question from Liza here. Looking at the promises that bring us into page 84 and continuing to the descriptions of 10, including the recognition of our fighting as our self-use warning system, what are options for chosen blindness or willful sleeping as members of a squad or people of spiritual authority when they are choosing stuckness? What is genuinely book described and most helpful?
Well, for me, I don't even know if that's chosen. Whenever I'm asleep, I really don't choose to do some of the things I do. I'm just kind of lost in that, in the moment, in that mental state. That's a hell of a question with a lot of big words there. Can you repeat the last part of that question, please?
Yeah, the last part of the question. What is genuinely book described and most helpful as described? Let's see, as what are options for chosen blindness or willful sleeping as members of a squad or people with spiritual authority when they are choosing stuckness? And what is genuinely book described and most helpful?
Well, for me, I don't really think that I made that choice. I think that choice was made for me. And the reason that I say that is because of what's listed on page 24 of our book. And it says this: the fact. Now, that's not a theory. That's a fact. That most alcohol, not all, most, for reasons yet obscure, have lost the power and choice of drink, drugs, sex, lust, food, whatever it may be. That so-called wild power becomes non-existent. We are unable at certain times, not all the time, because there's times that I seem to have some sort of power over this, but at certain times to bring into my consciousness with sufficient force the memory, the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. I'm without defense against that first drink, that first thought, that first drug, whatever it may be. I'm without defense against that. So if I'm evolutionized in my experience through these steps, the last thing that I'm going to do is choose to go backwards. But if I fall asleep, I'm not going to have any choice in that matter. That's going to happen to me regardless, whether I think I got any power to put a stop to it or not. I can guarantee you I don't. My defense must come from a higher power. Page 43 of the book. Let's take a look at that real quick. Last paragraph. Once more. Now, he started talking to us about this on page 23 of the book. 20 pages later, he says, all right, I'm going to tell you one more time. At a certain time, you're going to have no effective mental defense. Not physical, mental. against the first whatever. But notice there it is again, certain times, not all the time, certain times. And that's what those pages have described. The insanity would come on those men. They would have absolutely no defense against it. They've been sober for a period of time, and they would fall out drunk and be baffled as to why. So, to answer that question for me is I don't really make that choice. I don't wake up and choose to hurt my family, to destroy my group, to kill my relationship with God. But as a result of falling into self and going to sleep, that's exactly what happened. So I don't know if that answers the question, but that's my answer.
Okay. And there was one last clarifying statement here that was brought in to clarify emotional sobriety and known acting out. Does that clarify anything with what your thoughts are on the response to that question, David?
Yeah, for me, whenever, I'm in emotional sobriety and recovery, acting out just isn't a part of where I'm at all. It's just not, it's when I'm not into emotional sobriety by watching my thoughts, turning to God, discussing it with another person, staying accountable, staying transparent. When I'm doing those things, I don't have any secrets. Therefore, the illness doesn't sneak up on me, the illness of self and divert me and put me back to sleep. It just doesn't do that. But when I'm not doing 10 and 11 on a regular basis, I can promise you there's probably something I would rather not tell. You guys are my wife. I just don't want to do that. And the next thing you know, I begin to hold secrets. And then, oh, hell, I'll see an image somewhere. And the next thing you know, it just continues on and on and on. And I don't know. But whenever my emotional sobriety is in a good spot, which it is, and has been for a long time now.
Okay.
That thoughts are gone. So
excellent. Thank you, David. All right. We have another anonymous question come in, and a reminder to our audience, if you have a question for David, please type it in the chat. If you'd like to remain anonymous, direct message me. If you'd like me to just read your first name, just put it in the general chat. This is from an anonymous member. Thank you, David, for your service. I have a question about sponsorship and fellowship. I believe that sponsorship is part of the medicine for me to stay healed. I also know old timers with sobriety and so-called recovery that feel that sponsoring others isn't needed for them anymore. Help me understand how you communicate with others who just feel that steps 12 is just taking a call once in a while and meeting at times. I'm asking because I feel that for old timers, it's imperative to continue the healing process for newcomers that come in all frantic and desperate. So what are your thoughts and takes on that, David?
Absolutely. Great question, brother or sister or whoever asked it. My take on that is if I have somebody that is not, you can't sponsor me if you don't have a sponsor. If you only take a call once in a while, then you don't have the passion to see somebody else recover the way that I did. The deal here is I see this with too many old timers, just go to meetings and don't drink or whatever it may be. That shit doesn't work very well for me. It never has in all these years, and it never will. So really, the book tells me on page 18 exactly how a man is to sponsor me, and it tells me how I'm to sponsor another man. So if we've got a minute for this, just run over to page 18 and let's take a look. Let's go down to about the third paragraph of the page, the paragraph just after the middle of the page where it says this, but the ex-problem drinker, that's a promise, who has found this solution. And he is properly armed with the facts about himself, not myself. I don't need him telling me everything that I need to do and how many times I need to call and what job I need to get and all this bullshit. No. He's properly armed with the facts about himself that can generally win the entire confidence of another in a few hours, and until that's reached, little or nothing to be accomplished. But the guy that's making the approach, he's had the same difficulty, he knows what he's talking about. For me, I find a lot of old timers, and this was me too for a long time, that would hide behind the badge of sobriety and not really be able to set you down and take you through the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and show you, not tell you, how to recover by the first 7 chapters that are outlined in the book. A man that can't do that, I wish him well on his journey. I give him a hug when I see him. But as far as he and I having any kind of a relationship together outside of that, there's just not going to be one. And I'm sure as hell not sending a newcomer his way. I'm just not going to do that. So, for me, I don't believe that my sponsor is what healed me. I believe that he did play a part in God's plan for me being healed, but he sure as hell, because I'm beyond human aid, I promise you. So anyway, thank you, Justin. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, thank you, David. I've got another anonymous question, and this goes into step 10. We talked a little bit about step 10, or you shared a little bit about step 10 here. And the way that you have taught step 10 has really revolutionized my own practice of that step. So here's that question. My sponsor has questioned my use of step 10 for selfish, dishonest, fearful thoughts I have. She's asked me if it's an obsession or if I'm trying to be perfect. I thought I was using step 10 the exact way the big book instructs, but now I'm wondering, can you speak to this?
Oh, I absolutely would. I would ask who taught you that. It should have been her or him or whoever it was. I can't question one of my sponsees on step 10 and ask him, why is he doing it this way or that way, whenever I should have been the one who showed him how to do it to begin with. My book tells me on page 90 that I do an interview process before I ever agree to sponsor someone. There is an entire list of questions in that paragraph for me to go through with that person before ever agreeing to sponsor. Once I do that, I take them to step 10, show them exactly what the book says. This is what I expect. There are no days off on this. You have to do this or else we have to part ways. So whenever that time comes, I don't need to ask the question, what are you doing with step 10, or why are you trying to be perfect or this or that? You already know how to do step 10 the way the book calls for it to be done. And if you're doing it the way that the book calls for it to be done, then you're doing it perfectly. So continue doing what you're doing. And, I don't know. There again, if a sponsor or somebody I work with isn't talking to me about what's lined up in this book, we're going to shake hands and part ways. So anyway, thank you.
Good. And I'll follow up on that. Anashwara asks, what or where are the questions to ask before we sponsor? And I know you and I have talked about this several times, but why don't you take us there and go through that real quick, Dave?
Yeah, absolutely. If you go to page 90 in the big book, this is something that you should do with everyone before you ever agree to sponsor them. This was called the interview process, as the first 100 did it. And this is the way that they would always do. There were certain things you had to do before you could even attend a meeting. And but here's a bird's eye view of what that looks like. When you discover a prospect for Alcoholics Anonymous, find out all you can about him, period. That means stop right there. So the first thing I do, I ask him, where are you from? How long have you been there? Do you have any children? Are you married? What do you do for a living? Tell me how long you've been acting out, how long you've been drinking. Tell me what your behavior looks like whenever you're not acting out and drinking. Are you irritable, restless, discontent? Are you full of fear, resentment? I want to know everything about him that I possibly can. And that's only a few questions of many. Look at the next sentence. If he does not want to stop drinking, using, whatever it may be, don't waste time trying to persuade him. I tell him right here, if we get into this work, if I agree to take you through this work, you slack up on steps 10 and 11, I can promise you time will not be wasted. We'll be finished before it even gets started. And I've proved that by letting many, many, many people go. I don't have time for drama. I don't have time for you knowing it all. I mean, if you know everything there is to know about the book and all of this stuff, then why are you talking to me? So if you come to do the book, you're going to do the way I do the book. That's what my sponsor told me. I told him, hell, I've had Charlie of Joe and Charlie as a mentor, for God's sake, and you want to read the book to me? And he said, yeah. How the hell's that been working out for you, David? By the way, I'm dying in the rooms. I'm dying inside of the rooms, but I want to tell him how to sponsor me through the book. That ain't the way this deal works, period. And so and here's the reason why. I may spoil a later opportunity. Now look at these two words, this advice. This advice is given. You'll hear in the rooms, we don't give advice here. We don't give advice at all. Bullshit. Not according to this book. Yeah, we do. If you're in a spiritual state of mind and you've had an awakening from self and you're on the journey of recovery, you can most definitely give advice, not only to him, but to his family too. Look at that. They should be patient, realizing that they're dealing with a sick person. If there's any indication he wants to stop, have a good talk with the person most interested in him, usually his wife. I disqualified myself from that. I don't talk to people's wife. I don't talk to their girlfriends. I don't talk to their daughters. And that's just me. The book says to do that, but I don't do that because I put myself in a place to where I don't. So next question. Is there any I'm sorry. Get an idea of his behavior. So let's take a look at that. I don't need to know his behavior after he's drank or after he's acting out or whatever he's doing. I want an idea of his behavior, of how he behaves before, not after, because that's what's going to tell me how to work with him, which we're going through the book anyway. So his problems, his background. Have you been to prison? Have you been to jail? What do you do for a living? On and on and on. The seriousness of his condition. What's your faith teaching? Is it Christianity? Is it Buddhism? Is it this? Hell, I'll work with anybody. It don't matter what your religious leanings is. And at the end of this interview, I always say this. I'm not asking you this to get up in your business. I'm asking you this because of what this last sentence says. I need this information to put myself in your place to see how that I would like to approach if the tables were turned. The entire time that he's been answering all these questions for me, he's told me exactly how to sponsor him. And he doesn't even know that. And he doesn't need to. But that's the interview process on page 90. And my guys, and before we work with anybody, we most definitely go through that paragraph with them and then start in 10, 11.
Yeah, thank you, David. I have a couple more questions before we wrap up here in a few minutes. First one is the 12 steps and 12 traditions considerably adds to the list of defects of character that were in the basic text. How do you feel about using some or all of those?
Could you repeat that one more time, please?
Yeah, the 12 steps and 12 traditions considerably adds to the list of defects of character. They aren't just the selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, fear that are listed there specifically on 84 that were in the basic text. How do you feel about using some or all of those additional defects of character?
I don't really feel too much on that at all, because those are the 4 basics. I can promise you everything else fall under those. You tell me that you suffer from a lot of worry and anxiety, I can connect that to fear. If you tell me that you lust after and you've really, not been truthful with your spouse and you're out running around, you're doing this, but you're sober from in sobriety, well, I can connect that to dishonesty. If you tell me that you've kind of been an asshole to the waitress down there, but you're going to the AA meeting talking about how wonderful you are and putting out all these quotes about how sober you are, I can definitely look at that as selfishness. So everything falls under those 4. You can break them all down if you want. Somebody had put impatience right there. That's selfish. Anytime that it's about my time. This is about me. I'm not very patient with you because you need to be doing what the hell I need you to be doing so I can be okay. That's absolutely selfishness. So, I could hammer those out all day long and write a whole list of them, but you know what? I'm going off of them 4. All the rest of it can be connected to that. And if I can't get an answer on that, I'm going to go to prayer first, and then I'm going to approach my sponsor.
Yeah, thank you, David. And I appreciate you walking through that. I sometimes, for me, it's helpful as I identify these things to identify, I'm being impatient, which is selfishness. I'll say that as I work through a step 10 so that I'm identifying the exact nature of my selfishness. So, and that's been really helpful for me, but thanks for going through that and making sure that it's connected to those 4 that are listed there. A couple more questions. This one says, David, I'm so grateful God brought me here to hear you speaking today. I have loved hearing your message. My question is, what are the 4 absolutes that you spoke about when doing your step 10? And this person says, I work outside to find find my mind wanders into self before I know it. And when I finally wake up, I feel really guilty. Do you have any tools that you use when you can't write anything down when you're on the road, for example?
Yeah, absolutely. I have done this work enough now to know that, when those come against me, the 4 absolutes is absolute honesty, absolute purity, absolute unselfishness, and absolute love. Now, if you Google the Oxford group and the 4 absolutes and all of this stuff as the first 100 did it, I promise you'll get a ton of information there to read about those. But those are something that I show the guys from day one. It's located in 3 areas of our big book, many more, but 3 areas specifically. One is in the 4-step inventory process of the book. Also in step 10 and then step 11. And again, we start in 10, 11 from day one. So my guys, they start learning about the four absolutes from day one. So anyway.
Good. All right. And final question that I have that we have time for today. What does sponsoring look like when your prospect is now working steps 10, 11, and 12? The connection, the conversation, the work you do together. What does that look like after that point?
What it looks like is they do that to me, or either I have a WhatsApp group for men to where step 10 is is in written form all day long. Now, one of the suggestions there is that we discuss this with someone immediately. Obviously, that's what our fifth step does. But I can't call my sponsor all day long. Every time a thought comes up that's unloving, unselfish, dishonest or impure. So what I do is I teach the guys how to do that in the form of a text. I've spotted lust. I've asked God to remove that, and now I'm turning my thoughts to someone I can help. Now the nightly review comes to me by email every night from these men. So it's not only, they don't only do this, mentally, they're doing it physically as well. They're taking action based upon that. Now, if you're in a place where you can't do that, if you are working outside, I know, I just stick close to God. But the main thing that I do in those is I watch very closely for those thoughts. I continue to ask God to remove them, watch and pray, watch and pray, watch and pray. But at night, in the evening, when we sit down for that nightly review, and remember it says when we retire at night, not when we go to bed. We try to do it when we go to bed, we're probably going to fall asleep trying to do it. So in the evenings when you retire, you sit down to do the evening review. Then everything that you wasn't able to send out in that 10th step throughout the day, bullet point it in your nightly review and send it out there. And you still get the same effect. So, this deal isn't hard. It just takes a little willingness, and pain's the good motivator. Quit doing it. Watch what happens.
Well, that pain is a good motivator. Thank you so much, David. This was a fantastic Rico 12 weekly speaker meeting. For everybody out there, all of the references, the books, the references that David used, I will have bullet pointed and linked in the show notes of the podcast here when it comes out later today. But man, if we missed your question, if you have more, consider joining our WhatsApp community. Liza, if you could put that link back in the chat again so that those that have come since you put it in there initially can get that. You can join in there and join in the conversation. If you haven't done so already, please consider rating and reviewing the podcast either on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It's a powerful way to work step 12 and get this message and get the opportunity of this message in the hands of more people and the ears of more people. All right, next Friday, we're going to hear from Debbie S., who previously spoke to us in June on 9th step healing. Next week, her topic will be a great follow-up to this. It will be 10th step evolution. I think it'll be a solid way to reiterate the things we've talked about and listened to today. Stay tuned on the WhatsApp community, on our email list for more information on that. If you're not on that email list, please send an email to me at rico12pod@gmail.com. And you can also send an email to me there if you would like to get in contact with David. If you're a man, if you're a woman, we'll make sure that we get you connected with somebody, because that's a boundary that David has. And anyways, we will launch off into the rest of our day now with the Lord's Prayer that David will say for us.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, David. Remember, everybody, there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find God now. Keep coming back, and when you do, come all the way in. Sit all the way down. Let's trudge this road of happy destiny together. Work it. You are worth it.
I've seen stars fall from above. I've fallen in and out of love. I've been high and I've been low. Now I know just can't do this on my own. I've seen a boy become a man. He got lost without a plan. He's so far away from home. Now I know that I just can't do this on my own. Your arms surrounding me, your touch is grounding me. No longer searching for purpose all alone, 'cause now I know that I just can't do this on my own. I'm looking for the words to say. You make the world a better place, and I can call that place my home. 'Cause now I know that I just can't do this on my own. Your arms surrounding me, your touch is grounding me. No longer searching for purpose all alone, 'cause now I know that I just can't do this on my own. So let me see just what you need to set you free, so we can be. I saw stars fall from above. I fell in and out of love. I got high and I fell low, but now I know that I just can't do this on my own. No, I just can't do this on my own. I just can't do this on my own.